loans for, and so we do a lot of business and thinking, and those two relate a lot to each other. I'm going to jump over that. It's kind of propaganda. I'm going to highlight the things that are in bold in these slides. I hope you can see them. If you can't, let me know. Please do that. So, very important that we understand how critical the crisis is for those who are extremely low income. The crisis is gaining trends. My son lives in Baltimore. He moved to Baltimore in part because he couldn't afford an apartment in Washington, D.C. But he's not really in crisis. He's paying, basically enough he's a teacher in Baltimore. He's going to be fine. But those who are roughly the minimum wage in the United States are really in trouble. They basically are paid more than 82% of them paying more than a third of their income for housing, and 70% of them pay more than half of their income for housing. Now, the reason why do we care about that? The reason we care about that is that means they don't have money for other things. They spend a lot less, and they have a lot more problems with their health. They spend a lot less, they have a lot more problems with getting good food. And that's an essential thing. We're going to talk about Johnson County in a minute. And Johnson County is not that much different. And as we can see, this is true with those who earn up to $30,000. And so this kind of the devil's choice that they must make between high housing costs and their own necessities is what drives people into real problems. So the other thing is, I just got back from some trips in the Netherlands and Belgium, and we were there in part for vacation, but we spent some time. The United States, as you might know, does not have housing as a right. You are not entitled to affordable housing here. It's not a right. We try to talk about it being significant, but it is not a right. And we do have programs, such as the Section 8 program, public housing, other programs for very low-income people, but those programs do not automatically qualify. I have a nephew who is trying to get on Section 8. He lives in Chicago. He has, and by the way, I saw this last night on my TV. There was a wonderful hearing. This is how much of a nerd I am. There was a public hearing in Johnson County where the woman was being asked about who was on Section 8. And there was this kind of implicit understanding that everybody on Section 8 was on welfare. And it took a while, and I was waiting. But somebody finally said, well, I'm not sure that's true. And it's true. Just so you know, 2/3 of the people on Section 8 are disabled or elderly. 2/3, not 1/3, not 50%, 2/3. So I have a disabled nephew. He's trying to get on Section 8. The waiting list in Chicago is 2.5 years. And that's not unusual. So he's not entitled to Section 8. He's trying to get on Section 8. It only serves about 1 out of every 4 eligible households. So part of the crisis is that we just don't really deal with the fact that you're not entitled to housing. The other thing that's happening is we're losing affordable housing. My organization, the Trust, focuses entirely on trying to preserve and improve existing affordable housing. And why do we do that? Well, because we lose, for every new unit we build in Johnson County, we lose 2. For every new unit we build in Washington, D.C., we lose 2. So we try to preserve what you're going to be talking about today, the property in Marshalltown, properties that will serve very low-income or low-income people going forward. And I think it's up here. We've lost 2 million units, 100,000 units a year over the last 20 years. And that's a lot of our subsidized housing stock that's going out the door. And why are we losing that? Some of it is just deteriorating, it's just lousy stock. But a lot of it is being gentrified. I live in Washington, D.C., and the average rents for an efficiency are $2,100 a month. If you have a Section 8 property, and we just bought one actually, the owner could have converted that property to $1 million condos. So we're losing a lot of stock out of it. The need is growing, and I'm not here to please everyone. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The federal government is not significantly engaged in trying to solve this problem. This is a chart that talks about what's going on with assistance in the United States of America. And the worst case housing needs are going up, and the capacity of federal housing programs to serve them has not gone up. Even under Obama's budget, HUD's going to cut down Section 8 subsidies. And in fact, there's another $1.5 billion short for Section 8 going forward this next year. So it's probably important to understand, about 11 years ago, the trust decided that we couldn't count on the federal government to really try to solve the housing dilemma. And so we made a concerted effort on our public policy side to start doing a lot more work with people like Carol Ann in Iowa and Kurt Hyde and other people. And because a lot of the innovation actually is done at the state and local level. I spent a lot of time working with people at the state and local levels, with our staff. And the fact of the matter, I didn't even know about the tax referendum here. That's what's going on at the local level. What's going on at the local level is a lot of green shoots that are happening where people are starting to figure out they can't count on the federal government for help. They've got to figure it out on their own. And I encourage you to learn from people like Greg, other people, Amanda, who are doing it in the field, and learn from their practice and apply that to real policy. And I'm up here just to talk about statistics, but they are really in the field. It's important to listen to. So, Iowa. I grew up in Storm Lake. I went to the University of Iowa. After dinner last night at Sally's house, I took the liberty of walking around the campus and reacquainting myself with McBride and all of these places that I used to haunt. And I was a graduate student here before I decided to do something else. And it's remarkable to me how it felt. That flood of memories came back, as you might expect. And I went to have a beer at a place and started talking to this bartender about what his situation was. Here's this guy's facts. He's probably 30 years old. He's got a trumpet, he's a jazz trumpeter. He graduated in music studies from North Texas University a few years ago, and he decided to go to Europe to make it. Well, that didn't quite work out. So then he went to Austin, Texas. And then he and his wife chose to have a baby. They just had a baby 3 months ago. And they came back here because they needed support. And they do that. And he's finding a place to rent. His folks are helping him right now. And this is not a person who is earning $100,000 a year, but he's not on the streets, obviously. And he's having some trouble. So why is he having trouble? Well, in Johnson County, there's only 11 affordable units for every 100 people who need affordable housing. That's from the National Housing Coalition. I like this cartoon. I don't know if you can read it from back there. Sally mentioned that you need, it was $17 or $16.40 to get. So the cartoon reads, a minimum wage employee needs to work over 100 hours to afford the rent of an average apartment. And the person responds, just a couple more hours, and they won't need an apartment. You know? That's kind of sick. I find it ironic. It's hard enough. So, the statistics I saw said you have to work 73 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, to afford an apartment in Johnson County. So, what do we have to try to address this crisis? The most important thing we have is the low-income housing tax credit. The nation's only real affordable housing program. I guess there's going to be a workshop on it. I encourage you to attend that. The state of Iowa allocates tax credits to developers for both rehab and new construction. And there's a lot of debate in the U.S. about tax reform. I was watching Warren Buffett this morning talk about the need for corporate tax reform. Every time he does that, I get a little nervous because I worry about the tax credit. Nobody else thinking about that. The tax credit has been a remarkable success. Private investment, essentially $8 billion a year of private investment in tax subsidies that go to corporations that turn around and buy credits for projects like Amanda's and the trusts. People ask all the time, is the credit going to go away? And I'll tell you in a minute why, but I really don't think That's a huge problem because the way they're telling their stories. The tax credit has a great story to tell, and they're telling it very well. So now we get a little bit into what I think is probably an overlooked piece of the puzzle. And that has to do with if subsidies are declining, which we now know, and the need is growing, which we now know, how do we deal with the shortage? Well, we need to start thinking about the efficiency side of the puzzle. We need to think about operating expenses in these apartments. The largest variable operating expense in any apartment, especially here in Iowa with your winters, is energy cost. Anything you can do to reduce the cost of energy or stabilize the cost of energy, even with $3 gallon gas, is important, especially as energy costs become more volatile. So we at the Trust, and we'll talk about this, this is a teaser for this afternoon, we've created a new company called NHT Renewable where we put energy retrofits and solar on top of homes in affordable housing in the U.S. And the most important thing that I didn't know is how much low-income people spend on energy. It's shocking. The average you and I spend on energy costs, if you're a middle-income person, is about 10 to 12%. Middle-income people spend twice that. I mean, low-income people spend twice that. They spend up to 22% of their income on energy costs. This is especially true, of course, in the Midwest and Northeast, not so much true in California, but it's a pretty high number. So we spend a lot of time talking about smart preservation. And the highlights of smart preservation is that it's green, it creates jobs, and it's good for the people who live there. There's a great guy, you may know him, you know Rick from Southwest Housing Partnership in Minnesota, who did this longitudinal study. He just did this because he wanted to do it. He wanted to see what happened with asthma in a project he built in Southwest Minnesota. So he did a longitudinal study, got a grant. The incidence of asthma and child ear infections dropped by 50 to 75% once he did an energy efficiency retrofit. Because the house was tighter, the house was better, the house was cleaner, it was environmentally better, and the kids just did that. So there's a lot of talk now about how affordable housing helps do with better health outcomes. And that is something, I'm moving into this direction where we don't just talk about affordable housing, but we talk about its impact on families. Just briefly, the Trust is working in 9 states, not yet Iowa, with utilities to try to get more utilities to provide energy retrofits. This shows you the disparity between, if you're in Iowa, I'm sure it's true here in Iowa, multifamily is not getting its share of utility funding. Utility funding is not tax money, it's your money. If you look at that little, your utility charge every month, it has a little thing for public benefit charge, that's the money that's going into retrofit properties all over Iowa City, and multifamily housing deserves its fair share. It's not getting its fair share in any place in the United States except Detroit. I mentioned NHT Renewable, I'm going to be talking about this later on. Thinking about the operating side of the puzzle is a crucial piece of this. We've got 40% of our costs on common areas. We're adding green spaces to all of our properties. We're adding greenhouse classes for all the kids. It's a great thing to be doing. It also happens to be something that helps your bottom line in an area of constricted resources. So, I'm going to conclude by talking about, 5 minutes? Great. Who knows Andy? Anybody here know Andy Goodman? Okay. So I came from Los Angeles before I came to DC. There's this guy named Andy Goodman. And Mark actually reminds me a little bit of Andy Goodman. Andy Goodman is this storyteller. And Andy Goodman believes that data doesn't matter. So a lot of people in the public policy world disagree with Andy Goodman. So he went to Carnegie Mellon University in 2007. He said, I'm going to do a little experiment. I'm going to take all the people on this side of the sanctuary, and we're going to ask you to write down what you did today. I'm going to take all the people on this side of the sanctuary, write down what you did today. And after that, I'm going to give each of you $5 in cash in a little envelope. Well, the students at Carnegie Mellon are pretty smart. They go, for $5, Miss Maria gets some coffee and some donuts, and I'll do that. So this side of the sanctuary, you go out that room, or that door, and this side, you go out that door. And at that door, once you go out, there's a person, and they say, you know what? You just received $5. There is terrible famine in Africa. There's terrible problems in Africa. You can help people in Africa. Please donate. The statistical likelihood of people living in Africa is 1/3 of the U.S. Please donate. And the average donation in that door was $1.38. People on this side go out another door, and the person there says, please help Mark. Mark is a farmer in Senegal. He and his wife, Sally, have 3 children. Their 3 children can go to college. We need your support. If you give me your donation, you just donate what you just received, I promise you, Mark can buy a hoe, Sally will be able to put the kids in college, and their family will be fine. The average donation, this is $1.38, was $2.62. So the politicians, or the sociologists goes, yes, but you never gave the people on that side the chance to hear the story. You only heard the data. Andy Goodman says, you know, you're right. Comes back 2 years later, it was the same exact experiment. These people hear both the data and the story. These people just hear the story. It went from $1.38 to like $1.62. It jumped from $2.62 to $2.80. So I'm a believer in Andy Goodman. I think data matters. But in the end, people care about people they know. I care about my nephew, Eric, who's waiting in Section 8. And so I think it's really important to celebrate what we do. And the Trust does a lot of resident storytelling. This is an example of what we're doing here in Briarcliff. And by having an affordable, clean, safe environment, I've witnessed residents have the ability to return to school to complete college. That's something people can resonate with. And I think it's important to start talking like that about what we do. Here's children at Hazel Hill running a lemonade stand as part of their junior band. Mr. Hilbert Turner moved to Trinity Manor. He's got a second chance at life. This is what people remember. This is what people care about. Children in Friendship Court did their own garden. And they actually served a public housing project nearby with the proceeds. So think about the data. Think about the financing tools. But don't forget about the people. Think about how to tell those stories in compelling ways that will make a difference. So I hope that was helpful. You have some great presentations coming up, and I hope that